This is Chef Ranveer Brar. Let's explore India in its purest form through its food as I celebrate India in 21 recipes. The reason I'm so excited about this one is because the recipe is representative of the area where I come from, where people get this excited when they hear about food. This one's from Punjab and the recipe is Amritsari Chole, and I promise if you thought this was difficult, you're going to change your mind after you see the recipe. It's a super easy recipe, you're going to have fun. So there are three parts to this recipe, and the first part is obviously the cooking of the chole or the chickpeas as we know them. Try soaking them for at least 6 to 8 hours to get the best texture and for them to cook the way you want them to cook. Alright, so I have some water that is boiling. To this water I'm going to add salt, and be generous with salt because this is the only time you have the opportunity to add salt in your chickpeas, otherwise they will not be salty enough, it will not be fun. And I'm going to take a muslin cloth. In the muslin cloth I'm going to put some tea leaves. This is the Indian black tea. Remember to use only black tea, because what you want from tea, more than the astringency in this case, is the color, right? Chillies, bay leaf. You could also add some cloves and peppercorn. Actually, I will add some cloves and peppercorn. And while I'm at it, I might as well put a black cardamom as well. Cloves, not too many, they can be very strong. Cloves actually have the highest amount of essential oils as present in any spice, like 25%, right? So be very careful with cloves when you're putting them in a spice mix or in a bouquet garni like this. And here we go. And now we'll add the chickpeas and let them boil and color at the same time. Now classically you would boil the chickpeas in an iron pot. The belief is that the iron makes it more black, and the color of the chickpeas in this case is really important to the essence of the dish. But I always say, it's the darkest you can get to, that's all that matters. If your tea leaves are not dark enough, don't worry about it. It won't really make a difference to the taste, just a little bit to the color. All set. And if you're wondering what this beautiful knife block's doing on the table, you're going to see more of this because this is my partner in crime, the Victorinox Swiss Modern Walnut Wood Handle Knife Block, and each of its knives has a story to tell, which is going to come to you in due course of time. So I'm going to take out the spices so we all get an idea of what goes into a good Chole Masala or an Amritsari Chole Masala. Very important, black cardamom. Very important, lots of black pepper. Cloves, not as much, but just a few. Anything Punjabi needs to have this fancy ingredient. Coriander, touch of fennel, just for sweetness, you don't really need much. And then dried pomegranate seeds. A little bit of fenugreek, good for digestion, beautiful for blood pressure related diseases. It's the amazing detox ingredient that we take for granted, and a little bit of mustard seeds, right? So this forms the base of our chole masala. Most Indian cooking, and the reason why it is so tasty and so successful, is that more than being recipe based, it's ratio based. It is the proportions of different ingredients that make more difference than just the absolute quantities of them. Now we'll dry roast these spices at very low flame. And it's usually a good idea to add a little bit of salt when you're dry roasting your spices, because one, salt evens the temperature out, and second, when spices blend, salt sort of absorbs, one, the extra moisture, and two, the essential oils that otherwise sort of get loosened up and lost from the spice mix. And now let's get on to the gravy. 3 medium-sized tomatoes, and we're going to need 3 medium-sized onions. We're going to chop them finely. Finely is very, very important because the consistency of chopping determines the texture of the gravy, right? And that is where my partner in crime comes in. So I'm going to use a Victorinox 20 centimeter carving knife. The reason I use a knife with a broad belly is because I do not want to put too much effort. And bigger knives with broader bellies allow you to use the bellies as fulcrum in a liver, which means less effort for you, right? It's pure science. The most common problem with tomatoes is that they become all pulpy and mushy when you cut them because you bruise them. The only way not to bruise them is to use a nice serrated tomato knife with a nice serrated edge. What I also love about this one is that you can actually butter your bread from the other side. You see the other side? It has a nice butter knife feel to it. I like to cut my tomatoes and butter my bread too with it. Always remember, minimum bruising means maximum shelf life. So the sharper your knife or the right knife that you use for the right vegetable, just like I am, and the longer your veggies are going to stay in the refrigerator, the better the shelf life. And it's always good knife practice or knife habit to give your knives a wipe the moment you finish your work. Victorinox knives are rust resistant, but it's always a good habit to dry your knife and store it away. And now with my Victorinox 15 centimeter office knife, I'm going to roughly cut my ginger, a couple of green chilies, and 7 odd cloves of garlic. Again, I could have pulverized this in the mixer, but that's not the texture I want. The texture I want is crushed, right? So we're going to use the mortar pestle, or what we call the Hawam Dasta. Nice. Like I said, pounded, not pulverized, right? That's important. That crushing is really important, and do not be stingy with ginger, garlic and green chilies. That's what Punjab is all about. It's about being robust and just going for it. And we have the elements for the third part, which is the gravy, also cut and ready. So let's make the gravy. So this is interesting because I'm going to use a little bit of ghee, but I'm also going to use a little bit of mustard oil for sharpness. Let's start with bay leaf, dried red chilies. These are the Kashmiri kind, which give you more color and very little sharpness. Cumin, and our ginger, garlic, green chili paste. Another aspect that sort of combines most of India is this art of tempering. The art of putting all your ingredients in hot fat, extracting the flavor and then building your dish around it is something that you see from north to south. And like I said, we are many cultures, but the joy that food gives us is one. And most techniques of giving that joy, fortunately or unfortunately, go through a good amount of fat. Here go the onions. So what I did was I very slightly toasted my garlic and ginger before I put the onions in. That part's important because the moment I add the onions are going to lose water and my ginger garlic won't really get a chance to toast. So when this whole combination of onions and ginger and green chili sort of starts smelling meaty, that means you're ready for the spices. So a little bit of turmeric, not too much. Red chili powder. Now this is Kashmiri chili powder. A lot of coriander powder. I prefer making my own coriander powder. I suggest you do that as well, especially if you want to master Punjabi food. Ginger coriander combination is the backbone of most Punjabi flavors. If you master that and use good quality ginger and good coriander, you sort it. Here go the tomatoes. I'm not going to add any more salt to it because what I want to do is I also want to use a little bit of the chickpea water, right? It has the flavor of the chickpeas. It also has the flavor of the whole spices. I want to be able to add that back into my gravy, and that water is going to be salty. So I'm not going to add too much salt right now. I am only going to add a little bit just so that my tomatoes soften up. And while the gravy is cooking, let's talk about the handles. Now normally when you pick up a knife, you look at the blade and you get all excited and you pick it up, wherein the part that determines whether you're going to cut your finger with it or not, more often than not is the handle, right? Normally we look for handles that stick to our palm so the knives don't slip. Bad idea. Or we look for handles that are very light and the blade that's very heavy. Bad idea. Now this here is a polypropylene copolymer handle, and if you see, the handle cannot be too light, it cannot be too sticky, and it cannot be too slippery, because if it is too sticky, the knife will then not be able to move in my hands that well. Or whether it is my favorite walnut wood handle that you see here, the beauty of the handle should be, one, it should fit comfortably, two, it should neither be too sticky nor too slippery, and three, and the most important bit, it should not feel too light on the other side of the knife. Don't add too much chilies or chili powder in your gravy because the spice powder that you made, the chole masala, has a lot of black pepper. So that also needs to kick in. This part is done. And here go the chickpeas. And like I said, don't throw away the water. This here is black gold. And this is the stage when I add a little more ghee and our homemade chole masala. Beautiful. Now just 2 minutes of covering and cooking. The idea here is all these flavors that have been separated, they need to come together, and you need to give them these 2 minutes of peace for all the flavors to come together. And now it's time to add our black gold. Remember, this is going to be too salty, right? So don't be too generous with this. But another thing that this water does is that it leaves that little bit of tan on the cholas. So tomorrow, even if you have it the next day, you'll feel that they are darker because the black gold keeps acting and keeps adding more color. I would not recommend more water or more sauce or more gravy or more masala than this. This is a decent consistency. Now it's once again time to add a little bit of ghee. Now the reason I'm adding a lot of ghee is because chickpeas or any other lentil for that matter is dry. It is rough on the palate and it needs the richness of clarified butter or ghee. And that's why most lentils, whether it is dal tadka or whether it is chole or dal makhni, always taste better with ghee or oil added to them. And we cover it, put the gas on slow, and I'll see you in 5 minutes. So chopped green chilies, chopped coriander, just to finish our dish. Beautiful. Looks fabulous. Now this is going to be easy. If you want to learn how to garnish Punjabi food, just keep some chilled coriander with you. Always comes in handy. Ginger juliens. Just throw them around. And don't forget our special chana masala that you learnt today. A beautiful dish. And it's not just beautiful because it's a recipe. It's beautiful because it's a reflection of who we are. It's a reflection of where it comes from. And that's what I say. Through these 21 recipes, the idea is to show you a little bit of India, a recipe at a time. Please don't forget to subscribe and stay connected to us. Thank you.